unhappiest in the saddle.
A fellow sportsman.
I am an FBI agent.
Great Scott!
What do you say we cut the chit-chat? A-hole.
Dogs and cats living together. Mass hysteria.
Come with me if you want to live.
Hello, and welcome to Retro Ramble. I'm Charlie McGee.
I'm George McGee.
And this time we're going to be taking a retro ramble on the 1987 classic from Paul Verhoeven that is Robocop. Joining us this time, it's Ben. Hello, Ben.
Hi guys, thanks for having me on.
Ben is from TopFilmTip and has also written a book which we will get to later. And Ben, like George and I, has taken another look at Robocop and has agreed to discuss it with us, haven't you, Ben?
I have indeed, thanks very much.
So Ben, tell us a little bit about yourself. So you and I have known each other for a couple of years, I think. Couple of years, and we met as strangers on the internet. I've been a fan of Ben's Twitter account, TopFilmTip, for quite a few years. So Ben, can you pithily explain how your Twitter account works?
So every day, morning and night, I tweet out tips for the best films on British TV, poster and a snappy little synopsis. So for instance, the film we'll be discussing tonight, Robocop, would be tipped along the lines of: killed cop cyborg seeks bullet-bathed vengeance in penis-shooting, toxic waste mutilating, visceral dystopian catharsis, Robocop.
Now that is a synopsis that even Verhoeven would be proud of. So we're going to be going to all the usual places where George will be covering off the production chat. We'll be taking a ramble through the film. There'll be some Coulda Woulda Shoulda. There'll be some suspicious spin-offs. But before we go any further, if you've not listened to one of our episodes before, here's George just to explain what to expect.
Yes, so we are film lovers. We are not film professionals by any means. But yeah, the purpose of these podcasts is, so Charlie and I grew up on a healthy diet of 80s and 90s blockbusters. We go back and have a look at these films and question, how do they still hold up? Why have they been such a big influence? And we just have a bit of fun with them. So we treat them a bit like an old friend. So we reminisce, we take the piss. But because we go into detail, there will be spoilers from the very off. There will be some colourful language, especially so. This is a Paul Verhoeven joint.
It's an 18.
It's a bloody 18, a very bloody 18. So yeah, we aim to have a bit of fun and go back. So if you're looking for some academic chat, this isn't the place to be. Though we will delve into some points of scientific fact later in the episode.
Yep. So sit back. Uphold the innocent, protect the law, fight the system.
Uphold of all of them.
Yep, so 987 Robocop, here it is. Enjoy.
All Detroit has a cancer. Cancer is crime.
As you know, we've entered into a contract with the city to run local law enforcement.
We were able to save the left arm.
What? I thought we agreed on total body prosthesis. Now lose the arm, okay?
We get the best of both worlds. Onboard computer-assisted memory and a lifetime of on-the-street law enforcement programming.
Hey, Louis, it's Super Cop.
This guy is really good.
He's not a guy, he's a machine.
What are they gonna do, replace us?
Murphy, it's you.
Go get him, boy.
Thank you.
You better back up, pal!
Your move, creep.
The future of law enforcement. Robocop.
Thank you for your cooperation.
So George and Ben, Robocop 1987, Paul Verhoeven. Before we jump into how did we get this film, should we start off with some first memories?
Why not? Why not?
And since you're our guest, Ben, what are your first memories of Robocop?
So I remember having a very close family friend, you know that friend you have who's known you since you were born, and he's kind of like a cousin even though you're not blood relations, and I remember he had older friends, scary friends, and he had access to bootlegged videos, and he had seen this film, and I remember him telling me about the film, and he was doing the I had no idea what he was doing, and he was talking, he tried to explain, spoilers, violence, the whole thing with how Robocop ends up breaking Directive 4. It made no sense to me.
Spoilers were cool back then. It's what got you to watch a film. They were encouraged.
Yeah, I mean, I guess we were like two 8-year-old boys, and one of them is trying to explain a very complicated plot point from the end of a 2-hour ultra-violent action movie to the other, and I was far too innocent to understand what's going on. Eventually we watched it. It gave me nightmares. It was terrifying. There were mutant, toxic waste bodies exploding everywhere. Blood and squibs and and
so
torture scenes. Yes, and it made quite an impression, and it was a long time, I think, before I had the guts to go back and watch it again.
Yeah, I need to invest in squibs, said Mr. Verhoeven after making this film. George, I think you and I are pretty much on the same page. I probably got a bit of a stronger recollection because I was a little bit older back then, or maybe I watched it before you did.
Yeah, I remember growing up being told how violent it really was, but I have strong memories, and I'm sure we'll talk about it later, watching the TV recordings, which were really badly edited and with some creative use of dubbing, of swearing.
Do you remember any choice dubs? Any muddy funsters?
What was it? What was the guy? Why me?
Yeah, there's the bit where in the convenience store where the guy's like unloading the shotgun into Robocop, and in the original version he's fuck you, fuck oh no, fuck me, me, and it's why me, and Dick Jones, I used to have some old names for the old man, like Bonehead. So yeah, there was some.
This was to be off the terrestrial television.
Yeah, there was like the ITV recording. So yeah, I remember watching it on TV, and yeah, it was heavily edited. So my memories of, I mean, it was like, Predator and Terminator. We watched it so many times. I don't have a first memory. However, my strongest first memory, I'm doing air quotes, is when I bought it when it was released on DVD. I bought the director's cut special edition, which was completely uncut, and the level of violence was all new to me. So the amount of you saw when Murphy's crucifixion of sorts, and yeah, just the level of gore was like it's almost like 10 times as bad as I'd seen it on TV.
Yeah, for me, it's pretty similar. It's like definitely not one of Dad's videos that we nicked off him. My dad was totally against these sort of violent films that there was, and for us, it was the gateway. It was the thing. It was the forbidden fruit. What we weren't allowed. Obviously, our neighbours, the Feeneys or Glendinings, were part of this because some of their siblings were slightly older, so they had the access that you were talking about, Ben. But yeah, it was very much, and it's funny to go back and watch it. I think Ben and I talked briefly beforehand and both agreed that it's better than we remember it to be, because I kind of pigeonhole this as an ultra-violent film that we were just watching it for the ultra-violence and for the fact that it was so gory and so high up. But actually, going back and watching, I was impressed by how solid a film it is.
It's a very smart satire, and I think that's what put off a lot of people. Like you say, it's not one of Dad's films, but I'm sure if Dad would have watched it, I don't think he ever has. I mean, I'm sure he would still write off saying, "Oh, it's too violent. It's far too violent." But I think in terms of the level of satire, I think he would actually say, it's quite a smart film, and I think that's why the title alone just conjures different images, as I'm sort of jumping ahead here, but apparently when the script was passed around Hollywood, loads of people turned it down just based on the title alone. It's like, sounds like a kid's show, Robocop.
Yeah. Ironically,
yeah.
If you're interested, you can go on YouTube and watch the kids' cartoon version of Robocop. It's pretty awful. But
it sounds terrible. I mean,
and it's quite strange to have had something that started off as this kind of political social satire. It's full of really torturous, horrendous, brutal violence being pitched for like Saturday morning cartoons.
Well, yeah, it was a bit of a trend in the 80s. A Rambo animated TV series. I don't know if it was just a line of toys, because I remember the Robocop toys. I remember I really wanted the Robocop gun and helmet combo you could get. But I think there was an Aliens, like those kids' toys, where these films were 18 certificate. Really
face huggers, fun for all the family.
Well, that's it, It was just a different time. You just don't get that anymore.
I saw something pop up on my Facebook feed the other way, and it's like a sleep apnea mask
in the shape of a face hugger.
It's a face hugger.
Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant.
Scare the hell out of your children in the middle of the night.
But it's strange about this film. Obviously, George is going to fill us in on how this film came to be. But what struck me from first memories to going back to it again was how much of a traditional origin story, like superhero. He's even got his own music. I
don't know. Is the RoboCop march or the RoboCop theme? But it is. He's got his own theme music, and then you've got his origins. You've got him going on patrol, which we'll get to. So yeah, for me, what struck me this time was just like, wow, this is kind of like if Paul Verhoeven did a superhero film. This is about a superhero and cuddly as Paul Verhoeven gets. So without further ado, George, where are we in because Verhoeven had made a few films, but I don't think he ventured very much into the Western sort of. It is his first American film. Paul Verhoeven is a Dutch director, and I think he'd kind of burnt all his bridges and pissed off a lot of people in Holland, so he was looking for a big American project.
Something about asking all the actresses to just a bit lower.
Well, no, I think it was like something political. I think he's just, he's a very outspoken guy, and I think he just riled up people the wrong way. So the script was going around, and they pitched it to loads of directors, and I say everyone had turned it down. Everyone just thought it was a ridiculous idea. It was a ridiculous name. Most of the studios laughed out the guy. So its origins was from two writers. So the writer Ed Neumeier and another writer called Michael Miner, and they had two similar ideas. So Neumeier's idea was about a robot cop, and Miner's his script was called Super Cop, was about an injured cop who was enhanced by technology. So they entwined those ideas. I think Ed Neumeier is sort of the main sort of creative force behind it, because and especially from the satirical edge, because he would go on to write more of the RoboCop stuff, but he also was a writer on Starship Troopers as well. I'm trying to think I don't think he had any involvement on Total Recall, which is a sort of unofficial Verhoeven sci-fi trilogy.
Yeah, RoboCop's Total Recall and Starship Troopers, yeah.
I think it's interesting to note that talking about those three films, RoboCop, Total Recall, Starship Troopers, but this was the first venture into sci-fi that Paul Verhoeven did. So one, it was his first American film, but two, it was his first attempt at sci-fi, and he, by his own words, was not a science fiction fan.
But he's obviously politically active in terms of his views, which is what he was channeling.
Very much so, but he initially threw out the script when it was put in front of him, and it was actually his wife that convinced him to take it on, because he couldn't get past the first 40 pages, and his wife read it and she said, no, it's got lots of layers to it, it's actually quite clever, and she convinced him to do it.
Cool.
So Neumeier provided the corporate sort of yuppie satire. He said it was the 80s, all these businessmen were reading, Japanese philosophy, like
The Art of War.
Yeah, Art of War. They were calling themselves killers, and his twist was, I had them literally killing each other to get ahead, which at the time was an original idea. Obviously, we've seen it explored in other sort of films. It's very much American Psycho-y.
I was about to say, when was American Psycho published?
I think it was around about the same time. I think it was late 80s.
So it's around about the time of Huey Lewis, if I remember correctly.
Bingo.
Yeah, no, it's. I think he definitely wrong foots them from the beginning. It's like he's got a certain style, certain satire that we obviously love, because if you've listened to any of our other episodes, you'll see that George and I have a certain affiliation for the dark comedy. We're the guys in the audience who laugh when somebody dies in a horrible yet hilarious way. So Verhoeven catered for us, or maybe it's because of Verhoeven.
Yeah, there is that, and I think he took that in terms of that whole. It's an outlandish idea, and he just ran with it, and he ramped it up. And I think, I'm not sure how much of this is true, but I'm pretty sure the whole sort of news clips and ads were Verhoeven's input, because he had moved to America and he was just discovering all this TV for this first time. He's like, what are all these adverts?
Well, I think it's interesting, and they often say, it takes an outsider to see. And you look at like the Grand Theft Auto games, and the Grand Theft Auto games could not have been made by an American games manufacturer, because they would be on the inside looking in, and it takes someone on the outside to absorb that culture from an isolated point of view to see
all the weird intricacies
and just how jarring it is compared with what they're used to for everybody else.
I mean, I remember going to Canada and America as I don't know, maybe 15, 16 years old, and just being astonished that there were literally adverts every 5 minutes. Like I remember trying to watch Back to the Future on TV, and it was like every 6 or 7 minutes there was a 5-minute advert break.
The credits finish, and then there's adverts before the film starts. It's unbelievable. I don't know if it's still like that.
Well, from I think the last time we were in Canada, it was like that. At the end of the TV show, you'd get an advert, and then the credits would roll afterwards. It was nuts.
And from a European perspective, that obviously seems strange. And and he obviously he came into a genre he wasn't familiar with, and he took on a culture that was alien to him, and he gave it a different point of view, and it shows.
I think
the ads, the games, nuke 'em.
Well, that's it. It's
the game show.
It's what it opens with. Is that sort of jovial look at the news, and it's actually quite scary as we live in sort of very weird political climate, and it just seems like it's almost coming true.
Well, that's another thing that I think you guys probably saw the meme going around. It was a Venn diagram of 1984, Brave New World, and the Matrix, and you are in the middle right now.
Pretty much.
So I mean, I think I always go back to this, but like, is it a good time to talk about the cast? Because there's some very strong performances in with Peter Weller's such a distinctive voice, Ronnie Cox, I mean, such a bad guy of that time.
But no, interestingly, this was his first. He was like known for like good guy roles at that stage. Like I think he'd been in a TV series as like
the dad,
the dad figure, and I think again it was whether it was that Verhoeven thing of taking something and twisting it, because he was seen for all these sort of like wholesome values, and he was like, no, I'm going to make you a really fucking awful guy, and it just shows that how good and actually like he is.
But we were terrified of Ronnie Cox because we had him in this, then we had him in the first Beverly Hills Cop and in Total Recall, and it's only in Beverly Hills Cop 2 when suddenly him and Axel Foley they're all friends now.
Yeah.
But he's like, in most of the films you see him in, he's a horrible guy, not to be fucked with.
I think it was interesting watching that, and I don't want to break you guys' format. I've got a lot of stuff I want to...
It's unbreakable then.
A lot of things I want to get in, and I don't want to get ahead of myself, but it's Clarence, right? Clarence Boddicker. and I have to say, like, you look, even now...
So Clarence Boddicker is the gangster, but Ronnie Cox is the Dick Jones. The corporate guy.
Okay. Yes. Yeah, sorry.
So Dick Jones is the evil guy at the top.
Yeah.
Okay, who's behind Ed 209.
Clarence Boddicker is guy called henchman Kurtwood Smith, I think he's called in real life. But yeah, they've all had very prolific TV careers. Like again, Kurtwood Smith, the guy who plays.
He's in the 70s Show.
Yeah, he was brilliant in that 70s Show again as the father,
as a lovely homely dad in the 70s Show.
Yeah. But sorry, I've taken you away from your train of thought. What were you going to say, Ben?
Well, I was derailing your train right there, talking about a completely different character. But interesting casting with... I found the bad guys were kind of interesting in watching it again after a number of years. Clarence... I mean, he's the main bad guy. He's called Clarence, right?
Yeah.
He's got a backup called Emile.
Yeah.
And one of his other numbers, Robert, I believe. And these are not tough guy names.
Yeah.
and then you look at Clarence, he looks like an accountant or a geography teacher. And you sort of the physicality, when you first see him, you think, like, how have they chosen him for the bad guy? But then you see him in that role, like guns, and and can you fly, Bobby, and all this stuff. And he
menacing.
Really brings it.
Yeah.
Well, he has some of the best lines, and just the bit where, and apparently this was improvised, where he's again when he's brought into the police station, he just spits on the desk. And he goes, "Give me my fucking phone call."
Oh, yeah. I think it's worthwhile talking about. Do you want to just dive into it now? Like we'll start at the beginning with, because we've got the advert. I mean, do you want to talk anything else you want to say about cast, George?
Peter Weller Yeah, so he's a classically trained actor. He earned loads of acclaim doing theatre. We actually talked about this in our Big Trouble in Little China episode, because that was written by a guy called W.D. Richter, who wrote the film Buckaroo Banzai Across the Eighth Dimension, and
which we still haven't seen yet. But
have you seen it?
I have seen it.
That's why you're here.
And can you kind of summarise it? Isn't it sort of like the rock star surgeon sort of?
It was a while ago. I seem to remember it being quite absurd, and it's not a very well grounded, take itself seriously to kind of film. But it's everything about the 80s, just not very coherent.
Fair enough.
But sounds perfect.
Very, very enjoyable. Definitely check it out.
Yeah, I think we'll have to check that out. But I think it sort of kind of goes hand in hand, because the thing with Robocop is the iconic design, and that was made by a guy quite famous. Special effects guy called Rob Bottin, or Bottin, I think it's Bottin, but he did and he'd just come from, whilst this film was in pre-production, he had come from doing the effects on The Thing. So he almost killed himself working all day, all night to do the effects on that. That was his first sort of big role, but it got him loads of acclaim. So he spent months working on the Robocop suit, the design. Verhoeven had him abandon the look, which was apparently they took influence from the film Metropolis, the robot in that, obviously, which has gone on to influence the C-3PO design in Star Wars as well. But yeah, Verhoeven wasn't happy with it, and he was like, that's crap, go for it. Then they really wanted to steer into like the manga aesthetic, because obviously manga was getting bigger in the States at that time, so they wanted to go for like a more sort of angular thing, and then they realized that was a terrible idea. They scrapped that and told Rob Bottin to go back to his original design. So
are we getting closer to a monkey in a suit yet?
No, sadly there was no monkeys in suits in this option, but basically it went really down to the wire because of the design. And basically Peter Weller in the meantime had spent months perfecting his robotic movements with a mime artist, and then because the suit was so delayed, the first time he tried on the suit was the first day of shooting, and he found he couldn't move in it. But it was basically so big, and he tried to complain to Verhoeven. Verhoeven was like, these actors, and he was really, really struggling with it. So they ended up taking a bit of time off, and he basically had to rework all his movements and mannerisms because he didn't realise the suit was going to be so constrictive.
And he needed to look robotic.
On the subject of the suit and the look, I watched a documentary on 2000 AD a little while ago, and there were people from that era of 2000 AD talking about how they just didn't have their proverbial shit together, and they were coming up with great ideas and kicking them out there, but they couldn't quite make that leap to Hollywood, and people were like kind of coming to them, and they were just a bit of a mess. And essentially they saw Robocop as the original Judge Dredd film, and you break it down, it's really uncanny. You have just the aesthetic, you have the jaw, the face is covered, the visor, you've got the body armor, the obsession with the law. He's a kind of like he's essentially like a fascist power fantasy for boys and young men. He's out there bringing judgment, killing the bad guys. He's got an awesome gun.
A lot of parallels,
and it's absolutely clear as day when you break it down. And in many ways, when watching it again a few days ago in preparation for this, and it does have a very, if you were a Judge Dredd reader, there are a lot of very strong parallels.
Well, it's even in the on the special features on the DVD. I watched the sort of 20 years later revisited, and it shows you footage from Rob Bottin's shop and all the pre-designs, and one of them is Judge Dredd, and they even say, "Oh yeah, we were kind of going for a Judge Dredd type look." So at least they sort of aren't now they're not shying away from it. It might have been a bit different at the time.
Yeah, well, it's clear he didn't have trouble looking like a robot, moving like a robot, but that was actually, it wasn't just plastic. It was a proper.
It was. I think it was actual like painted rubber with like painted metallic. And I think I heard in the sequels they made it out of fiberglass, so it was a lot lighter to move around in. But apparently it was so heavy, and they filmed in Dallas over like a very hot and humid summer, and apparently Weller was like losing pounds every day just being stuck in the suit because it was so hot and constrictive. But the producer John Davison admits like quite openly, he says the whole production was a terrible experience. Many people by the end of it weren't on speaking terms, and he wasn't sure if he was going to ever work on another film, but it miraculously turned into a success.
Nothing alright, but it wasn't just the suit, it was the I think the setting, futuristic Detroit. Now, I don't know, say what you will about it was 1987, but for me this is a more believable future than Demolition Man. I mean, LA's not on fire, but it's not too far. They don't jump too far ahead. It's not too futuristic.
Well, again, I mean, it was that sort of that whole thing of, you know, a bit like Blade Runner, of that big corporations coming in and taking over stuff, and, you know, the privatization of
crime
of the police force. And yeah, it's obviously, you know, was an issue in the 80s. It's now an even bigger issue today. You know, it's a very valid point. They're talking about, you know, the NHS and obviously all the rail services and stuff like that. It's
private police forces in London.
Yeah, private armies. What are we going to have next? Corporate yuppies.
Corporate yuppies.
Not just any type of yuppie, corporate yuppies. And to just touch on a point you said before, I think that's what's introduced very early on, is Robocop is quite, I wouldn't say, there's a lot going on with him. There's a psychological angle. There's a fish out of water looking very like he's in control, when in fact in his head he's all over the place. But even the goodies, the baddies, the good baddies, you know, you've got Bob, you've got Dick Jones, you've got Clarence. There's so many layers to them all. And it's fascinating to see them kind of, it's like, who's going to survive? You know, they're just fighting amongst each other. But I just love the setting, the whole thing, that it's just a precinct, that it's in turmoil, and as you say, corporation sees an opportunity.
Again, going back to the casting, so Nancy Allen, prior to this, she was basically a bit of, as I've admitted this before, I'm not really much of a horror fan, but she was a bit of a scream queen. She was in like loads of horror films, or she was like...
Wasn't she in the Philadelphia Experiment?
She was. Good memory. But she was, I didn't realise until I was doing research, she was married to Brian De Palma for a while, so that's why she was in several Brian De Palma films before they got divorced. And then she wasn't in many Brian De Palma films. But yeah, she was either known as sort of the bitchy role. I think she was like one of the bullies in Carrie, or sort of like stalkery, like slashery type, sort of, you know, damsel in distress. So again, I think it was Verhoeven's choice to have her cut off all her hair, because she had quite long hair normally.
Need you looking butch.
Well, yeah, he wanted her desexualized essentially. But yeah, it is a great sort of against character, and it's something that, ironically, I'm sure we'll go back and forth on this. But in terms of the remake, that's gone. He's just got a generic male partner in the remake of Robocop.
Yeah. How much time are we spending on the remake today?
As little time as they did on the script.
So moving on.
Yeah, you've got that opening, and
then we've got the corporate. Are we going to talk about that scene in the boardroom?
Well, yeah, of course. Well, the thing I didn't notice is, like, again, sort of 80s effects and stuff, but it's quite like, again, I find quite charming, is like the matte painting. So like that opening scene of the Detroit police station, so you've got this real building, but then in the background you've got these looming like massive skyscrapers of New Detroit.
Yeah, and it's just a map, no need for CGI.
It's just a painting. But that does indeed take us to New Detroit, where they're talking about old Detroit has a cancer. The cancer is crime.
He's just known as, in the credits, as the old man.
The old man.
He doesn't actually have a name.
Well, it's basically like a live... It's a bit like a Dragon's Den, isn't it? It's sort of like they're pitching for the latest law enforcement gadget, aren't they?
Yeah, and yeah, you've got...
So you've got Dick Jones... Dick, and you've got Bob Morton, who's got the Robocop project. But yeah, we get our first introduction to Ed...
ED209.
Enforcement droid.
Enforcement, but I think
they quickly change it to Ed.
Ed, quite quickly. I think Ronnie Cox calls him Ed 209.
Please put down your weapon. You have 20 seconds to comply.
I think you'd better do what he says, Mr. Kenny.
But yeah, again, in terms of that iconic lines that you would fire at each other when we were kids, I remember, like, you have 20 seconds to comply.
Yeah.
And it is a terrifying scene, that.
It's so dark.
I remember being completely terrified by that.
Where they're like pulling out all the wires and nothing's happening, he's still counting down.
Well, I think, because the reason I wanted to get to this scene is because for me, this is one of the most important scenes in the film because it demonstrates Verhoeven's concept of satire, and he addresses the elephant in the room immediately, like Robocop. Well, what about the whole thing? What could possibly go wrong putting the gun in the hand of a robot? And it's from the off,
using live rounds.
Yeah, using live rounds, of course, and he makes it funny. Well, I mean, horrifically, terrifyingly, but it's that cathartic thing because it's such an logic.
It's such an awful thing though that he's counting down. He's still counting down. The guy's trying to run away, and everyone, in terms of that corporate side, everyone's pushing him back in. Sort of,
you're on your own.
Yeah,
there is no I in team.
Yeah. And then that was one of the things I noticed in the director's cut, the uncut version. It's like he is shot so many times. He's literally like turned into mince by the end of it. And that brilliant line of, somebody call a paramedic. It's sort of like, he ain't coming back.
But that scene actually is a really good example. The thing I really picked up on in this film is in the storytelling, and there's two sides of storytelling. You've got plot, which is the stuff that happens, and story, which is what's going on inside the characters, what's moving things forward, what the change is inside the protagonist and the lead characters. And it's a fantastic scene where perhaps a less interesting or smart director or a worse scriptwriter would fall down is they go, well, let's have a scene, we'll have this droid, it will kill this guy, it'll be amazing. Well, that's plot, right? But what Verhoeven does and what the scriptwriters do is that everything that happens pushes the story forward. So you introduce corporate, you introduce law enforcement, you introduce the what if, what if robots had guns, then you've got the what if it goes wrong, well, here we go. Then you've got everyone, as you say, pushing him away, so you've got, well, there's no love in this room, Then at the end of it, that whole scene precipitates Robocop because the other guy comes in whose name is
Bob
Morton, and he's like, okay, well, this is my opportunity to get my Robocop side project kick-started. So once
and that creates tension between him and Dick Jones, which is its own side story.
Exactly. So you've got your
Dick Jones is his boss. They work in the same department. Dick Jones heads it up, and Bob's just looking for promotion.
I think they're competing.
Are they in competing departments?
Yeah. So you have this beautiful melding of the two storylines. You've got Murphy coming in at the beginning. He's new. He's kind of experienced, but perhaps a little naive to the area. And he's like, well, this is serious stuff. And then on the other hand, you've got this other thing coming, and they kind of obviously collide in the big kind of Robo-Jesus crucifixion scene, and
Robo-Jesus,
and it's just such a tremendous piece of storytelling to get so much inference and information and character building into one, it's like 2-minute scene, I think. And then this is repeated all the way through every scene in this film that we'll talk about. Their story is being pushed forward, the character is developing, things are moving along. Whilst plot is happening, there's no scenes that are empty of story, that just have action sequences or set pieces. Everything is pushing that story forward, and that's what I loved about this.
Well, yeah, because like even with Lewis, the fact that she doesn't immediately see that it's Murphy, that she has to work it out over time. And you say, well, come on, you can see some of his face, but we're not exactly sure how much time has passed. But even that's got a point to it, because she's going to bail him out later in the film. It's not just, and she doesn't become the love interest. It's the partner. Well, it's cops partners taking care.
I think that was actually a thing that Verhoeven pushed against. I think they were originally, the studio was trying to say, oh yeah, you've got to have a love scene between Murphy and Lewis, and he was just like, well, no, that's just going to completely strip it of, it's just going to cheapen it essentially. Why does it need to be there?
Well, and essentially his character arc is like he's stripped of his humanity. He doesn't know who he is. There's a strange that opening scene where he's being fed baby food and you're walking in. I mean, it's tremendous. You don't see Robocop for like 25 minutes of this film.
Yeah, it's really clever, because even there's loads.
The point of view thing.
Yeah, I was going to say
makes him. You see his innocence, his point of view, and
the office party.
and it's about him regaining his humanity and discovering, trying to get through the pain of what he's lost. And here in the end of the film, towards the end, he takes off his helmet in the final scenes. He becomes Murphy again, and
he looks so funny without his helmet on.
And that's what the arc is. And as you say, like if there was some kind of weird robo sex scene? Like, how would that?
Well, I think it was going to be before he was. I don't think we're going to see Robocop.
Okay.
I think it was going to be.
Anyway.
I think it was when they were.
I downloaded the wrong film.
I think it was going to be human on human before the Robo crucifixion. Robo-erection.
Resurrection.
Resurrection, not robo-erection.
Let's just park that. We'll come back to that later.
So you have the Ed 209 test goes horribly wrong. Dick Jones just says it's just a glitch.
Yeah, we'll iron it out. No, nothing to see here.
But then it quickly cuts to again that sort of I don't know if it is economic storytelling, but we get to see Clarence and the gang being chased by Murphy. So there isn't actually much time to get to know Murphy and Lewis, their relationship, but they do it quite well in terms of how they work together and stuff like that. So we get to see how much of a shit Clarence Boddicker really is. He's willing to see if one of his gang members will fly.
Yeah, sacrifice anybody.
Well, and just a moment before that, I believe there's the scene. This is a really interesting, telling scene that you perhaps as a child I didn't pick up on. Murphy turns up and he gets the locker of a dead cop.
Yes.
And the chief walks in and he's like, give your donations to Cecil as usual.
Well, that's it.
So many cops have died.
No, but that's the opening bit. The very first thing you see is the news program, and there's being left for dead, being gunned down by Clarence Boddicker. More exposition, and then he's like, "Get well soon, Frank." It's this man is on life support.
Yeah,
and he's the cop. Yeah, that they take the name off, but
straight in there. Yeah, but it's some very economic, as you're saying. The storytelling, just how you see that both Lewis and Murphy, they're going to be great partners. They're both trying to jostle for who's the alpha in the partnership. They're both willing to go into an undescribed location without backup. Hilarity ensues. So it's very quick. They don't have much time together in this first act, but they already establish a lot.
One thing I did notice, though, I was talking about Weller's sort of robot moves, and when he is Robocop, he's very slow and methodical, but quick jerky motions. When he's in pre-Robocop Murphy thing, he's moving as quick as possible. He's spinning around. He's really making his most sort of I've only got a limited amount of time where I can move. I'm going to move quick.
Don't put me back in that suit. Do you reckon they must have done this before they put him in this suit? They probably were doing the shooting maybe chronologically.
I would hope. But I mean, his physicality is really sells it. I think again, there's so many places this film could have fallen down, but everyone was completely giving it their all and selling it. And Peter Weller's,
I think you take it for granted how good a performance it is, just in terms of just the subtlest of movements, the jerky motion.
I think he turns his body and then his head, things like this, and it completely sells it, because anyone else in that suit would have just walked down. You've got, that's a guy in a suit.
Yeah.
But you look at this and you're like,
and also some amazing Foley work as well for the
sound effects.
And the theme we mentioned before, and
the superhero theme, as I'm calling it. Whenever it's like whenever he's going, because you've got all this world building, you've got the look and feel, and that's what he's saying. It's not just, I think, what people might have said or what I thought it was, when we were watching it when we were younger. It's just a violent film. You like it because it's got violent guns. It's actually a multi-layered cop, detective drama, because his story is he finds out who killed him, and it's all the story of, it was actually the origin of Robocop itself. How convenient that is, we'll not talk about. But I don't know if you can relate to this, but for me, and George has watched so much, so I very more Total Recall than Starship Troopers. Obviously there's a bigger time gap, but there's a lot of the adverts and the feel and the music.
No, but if you think about this, there's still
3 years between this and Total Recall.
But I would say this is very kindred spirit to Starship Troopers in terms of, obviously I say you've got the same writer, Ed Neumeier, but all those would you like to know more, those inserts, you did have some fake adverts in Total Recall as well.
There's some lines as well. I noticed, I took a note down here, the shower scene at the beginning.
Yeah, there's the obligatory communal shower scene.
Verhoeven's obsessed with communal showers.
You've got, there's quite a few lines in here as well. You Want to Live Forever?
Yes, I think I noticed that.
Both films, and...
Not enough Michael Ironside.
We'll get to that later.
But yeah, I think there were parallels across the board. I think you're right. It does fit in with.
I think that's just a time thing, though. Yeah. Honestly, I think you're right. I think there's probably more theme shared between Starship Troopers and this. But the sound and the music and the datedness,
the feel of it, and also the loss of humanity side. I think there's Starship Troopers deals more with like political and social themes.
This is much more of a psycho.
But Total Recall and this deal more with like kind of personal ideas of humanity.
Whereas what in Verhoeven's words, what he describes like he's an American Jesus who carries a gun.
Robo Jesus.
So yeah, he wasn't he's more than like numerous times we'll talk about how it is a Christ parable, and obviously he said I think he got a lot of flack for how violent that
opening
the crucifixion scene is, with Murphy, where
it just shoots his leg, his kneecaps up.
We see his hand explode. And there was even a scene where they built Rob Bottin built a replica of Peter Weller for when he gets shot in the head and you see the back of his head explode, and that was cut
very Terminator-esque. Just the fake head. The replica head.
So jump back a bit, guys. Did you see the Terminator before you saw this, or was this coming about the same time?
No, I think
Terminator was 84, right?
I just think in terms of our lexicon,
I would say it's about the same time for me. I mean, what you almost like would watch them in the same sitting. But yeah, I think even though it was a few years earlier, I think it was they all sort of, by the time that as Charlie was saying, I came to it a bit later, being a bit younger, but they all came sort of at the same melting pot. Toxic waste.
We'd go over to our neighbours, they'd say, do you want to be scared? We'd say no, they'd say, well, we're going to put this on anyway. So I think that brings us nearly to Act 2, Robo on Patrol. Because that's what I was talking about earlier with the whole superhero film. He's established and then he's on patrol. He's showing off his powers.
Well, as Ben was saying, there's some great use of a point of view in this film. Like, you see, I say the stuff it's actually been parodied quite a bit. It's been parodied in Spaced really well, where you're seeing it like, I fucking love this guy. And, all the sort of tracking and stuff like that. And it's quite a while before you actually see him. You see him on like a bit of him on a TV monitor.
It's just a glance.
Yeah, just a glance. And then it quickly gets into what I've called sort of like the robo crime montage where he's on patrol.
I love that bit.
The theme kicks in. It's the first time. I mean, it's
34 minutes till the theme.
Really?
It's the first time you hear the superhero theme.
I mean, it's a great soundtrack. I mean, it's something that I cocked up on, I think, on our Starship Troopers episode. I couldn't remember the name of the composer. It's the same guys, Basil Poliduris, I think. Is it pronounced? He did Conan as well, so very bombastic. He did stuff.
I'm hearing a lot of Conan now that you say that. Starship Troopers.
But he talks about how he did sort of a mixture between synthesizer and orchestra to reflect the sort of machine and human qualities in Robocop. So there will be different parts where it's orchestral and then other parts where it's more synthesizer.
Anything with synth gets our vote.
There's that whole sort of crime montage. I say we've got the convenience store, why me, or fuck you, fuck me, whatever it is. We've got the attempted rape scene, which is iconic. I mean, that image of the silhouette, just seeing the giant silhouette Robocop on the wall is quite iconic.
I just can't stop
thinking. And the penis shooting.
Yeah, there's the penis shoot. I just can't stop thinking about the Amiga game.
I'm glad I was going to say.
So it was that. I don't know if you had a Commodore Amiga, but yeah, it was the tracking thing. You had to get it in between her legs, just like in the film. That the photo match thing was again. Yeah. I think the game was terrible, but it was an Amiga game. We loved it.
I remember the photo match thing being really quite good graphics for the Amiga.
It was just photos.
But yeah, you had, it was basically like matching up the tracking, sort of a bit like you get on sort of, football games with the power bar would go up and down. You had to get the sights right. But yeah, it was a great game. I recently played the Robocop versus Terminator game
I completely forgot about that.
Which is terrible. It is terrible. But yeah, the Amiga game, lots of fun memories there.
In that game, do they make any pretense to try and explain why Robocop and Terminator are in the same game together? Fighting, presumably?
Skynet sends Terminators back for reasons, and Robocop's the only person that can sort them out. Apparently, I think it's very, very clunky. I'll have to show it to you at some point. It
works on paper.
Yeah. It's garbage. So yeah, after the attempted rape scene, great silhouette. We've got more TV. This is the one that definitely did remind me of Starship Troopers. We've got Robocop at school.
What?
Stay out of trouble.
Robo, any tips with the kids? It's the way they're all chasing after him, and he suddenly just stops and turns around, and they all freak out. It's and
there's your Starship Troopers again.
Exactly, a good bug is a dead bug. And you also get, the game for all the family, Nukem.
Red alert! Red alert! Red alert!
Crossed my line of death!
You haven't dismantled your MX stockpile.
Pakistan is threatening my border!
That's it, Buster. No more military aid.
Nukem. Get them before they get you. Another quality home game from Butler Brothers.
Brilliant. But once again, Verhoeven flexing his activist muscles.
Can we talk about how narrow the barrel is on the gun in the drugstore scene?
The robber's gun.
Yeah, it just seems. I don't know a lot about guns, but it's like he's shooting like 2.2s or something.
Like it's meant to be a sawn-off shotgun, but it's got an extension which is like really thin.
Bends it.
Yeah,
I think that's added for that and to make it kind of look futuristic, because he does that with a few of the other guns. They are, I don't know if you've noticed, but like the guns that skipping right to the end, the big
ridiculous
powerful guns that explode are actually just high-powered sniper rifles, which have had some add-on things added, and a lot like taken out of Aliens.
Because it seems strange to me introducing this big, but like strong, powerful man machine, and then he just shoots him with this little like pellet gun or something, and the only thing I can think of is that he's building it up, so it starts off with these tiny little pellet guns, but then by the end of the film you're not bored of him getting shot, because now they're using
tank cannons,
gigantic sniping tank gun.
But I think that whole thing is so that he can bend the gun. I think they've actually inserted something into the end of a shotgun, and it's bendable.
There's also some lovely product placement in that scene when the guy's like, "Where's the safe? Where's the safe?" And it's hidden under a mountain of Miller Lite cans.
Yeah, product placement.
So we've got some more corporate shenanigans. We have Jones versus Morton, where
don't fuck with Dick Jones.
Yeah, that is, as you say, it's like something out of American Psycho, where in terms of like they're slagging each other off, they're trying to get one up on each other. There's the corporate VIP toilets they've got access to.
Yeah, executive washroom.
Got the gold card.
Yeah, but then obviously Bob's doing some sherbet with those two girls, and Clarence turns up.
I've said you've got two scenes very close to each other. So you've got the bit where Murphy starts to remember, and you've got some, again, really good point of view. There's one thing that it's a visual thing that annoys me in films, when you see flashbacks, that people experience flashbacks and they see themselves in it, whereas this is, I think, one of the few times that someone has a flashback and you see it's from their point of view. So he's seeing them,
he's walking through the house,
he's seeing his kids, you see them posing for a photo, and he's not seeing himself in the memory, but that's just a small point. But yes, we have the obligatory 80s club scene, where he takes out,
it's like an acid house rave as well. It's like, I didn't even know they had acid house in 1987, but it's not like kind of like your kind of
80s pop,
like pop and rock kind of thing. It's proper hard.
I was going to say it's a bit sort of 80s synthy.
All I'm saying is it's obviously the club, the type of club that Verhoeven would see himself in. So some Charlie trivia: Paul Verhoeven is in that scene.
Really?
I think he's the guy that. Yeah. One of my favourite bits of the scene where he knocks the gun out of the gangster's hands, and it lands in somebody else's, and he just carries on dancing.
Is that Paul Verhoeven?
That's
wonderful.
But you've also got, as Charlie says, the obligatory 80s coke scene.
What do we do? We're yuppies. What do we love? Coke.
So doing coke with two lovely ladies
who must be his friends.
Until Clarence Boddicker turns up and delivers
and lets the ladies go.
No, but that's it. No, because obviously there's the amazing line, "Bitches leave."
One of my favourite lines.
But in the ITV version, "Ladies leave."
Yeah. But that to me, is very like the Ed 209. It's terrifying.
Well, yeah,
you've had your knee shot and there's a grenade ticking on a table. It's just...
Yeah, that was something that really used to like jar with me when I was far too young to be watching it as a child. That scene really rattled me in terms of the fact he can't get to it in time. And now I'm just fascinated that they've put like a little Casio digital countdown on a grenade.
Because we still haven't got those.
Still haven't got.
Last time I tried to buy grenades, what have you got those Casio things yet? Not buying it.
Not interested. Yeah. Not interested. Another sort of 80s scene, well, it's more drugs, it's the drug factory scene, which is a big action set piece.
Yeah.
Which is some phenomenal, Charlie's doing some lovely movements, posing.
Gun under the arm, I'm just so good, I can just shoot from anywhere, but it's not even looking.
Well, that's it, it's some great body choreography, I suppose it's action choreography, but everyone's shooting at him, and as you were saying, Ben, it's a bit of that escalation, from just being one or two people shooting at him, a whole room of people are shooting at him. But I've got one question, and I've said before, why not shoot him in the face?
You're such a killjoy, George. Maybe he's got bulletproof cheeks.
Yeah, why didn't you shoot for the face? It's a chance we were willing to take.
Maybe he has a metallic face and
under the skin.
High-tech, future, they've just grown some skin over it, and it's actually his whole skull.
Well, that's true. We don't know what's behind the skin. That's
and
true.
they just kept his brain.
What if
that's true?
I think that seems a bit far-fetched. What if there was like an aura that's just refracting the bullets as they arrive? Nothing that simple,
like a force field.
Like a force field.
Well, the thing is, you could extrapolate. If he can shoot people without looking directly at them because he's calculated where they are in the room, perhaps he can calculate trajectories and he's always
out of line
moving
of fire.
out of line of fire,
moving his head.
Yeah.
I like it.
We're back in the disco scene.
Well, speaking of science,
science time.
Were you going to enlighten us about? So there's the scene where Murphy confronts Emil, one of the thugs, at a gas station, and there's a brilliant, pure 80s cool guys don't look at explosions, him walking away as the whole gas stations, we're in America, it's not a petrol station.
I like American things now.
So the petrol station blows up, but Ben, are you going to tell us why this is completely wrong?
I am. The curse of being a scientist is that you see everything wrong in films with respect
that
to
would never
science.
happen.
And you have to really suspend your disbelief. But one thing that it's a common occurrence in films is petrol being ignited by a lit cigarette, and it does not happen. It's impossible. Don't
try this at home, kids.
I really don't recommend you try this yourself. Because
what about firing your gun many times at it? Does that work?
If you get some sparks off it somehow, that could work. But the fact is that it's petrol vapor that burns, the invisible vapor that comes off the petrol. That's the part that ignites. The actual liquid itself doesn't burn. And
is that the stuff that burns your nostrils if you sniff too much of it?
Charlie, no.
Speaking from experience. So if you need a naked flame or a spark. So if you don't see it in this film because he throws the cigarette down, then you get a wide angle, there's an explosion. But if you
a big explosion, very good. And it is a fuel explosion as well. You can tell by the colour and the smoke. That's real petrol burning there, guys. But so some level of realism.
But if you do spot an action film where you see the cigarette go down and the fuel kind of edge towards it, and you watch very carefully, what you'll see is the fire will begin somewhere else and flash across to where the cigarette is, because the cigarette does not have the ignition propensity.
Somewhere there is a monkey.
Petrol.
There's a monkey in a suit with a blowtorch,
dressed as a fireball.
As a fireball, I was thinking as a gas station attendant, George.
Oh, okay, sorry.
So they'll use a little electric fuse or some electric circuit that will just press a switch. It'll click a spark off or light a little flame, and it will just shoot in from off camera, and you'll see that flash race across the fuel. It happens very quick, but if you're careful and you watch, you'll see that a cigarette will never light the fuel in an action movie.
But once again, do not try this at home.
Yeah, really, really do not try this at home, because the lighter you use will.
And somebody might call Ben and he'll have to go to work and he won't be able to complete the podcast. But it's still a damn impressive, as you say, it is a proper physical explosion. Lots of fuel was harmed during the making of that explosion, I think, or used.
And it's like the 80s. You don't get many explosions like that these days.
Well, now
They're
you
all
just
CG.
You just turn off to it
Well,
now.
so people were worried about the carbon footprint now.
That's true. That's true.
Yeah.
So yeah, where we were, there's the drug factory scene, lots of broken glass, lots of drug dealers, lots of squibs.
Yeah, it's the 80s.
I work for Dick Jones. I'm just
Dick
just
Jones! Dick Jones! Dick Cop! Great physical work from Weller, some great bad guy stuff from Kurtwood. So yeah, I think that takes us to the final act. I do like the fight.
I do like the final act.
The final act is I do like the Ed 209 stop motion. Falling in, it's like doesn't like stairs.
So that leads me on to some more trivia. So whilst Rob Bottin did the Robocop effects, a guy called Phil Tippett did the stop motion effects. Now we've talked about Phil before because he was the man that did the stop motion. He was a key part of the animation for Jurassic Park. So he did all the dinosaur movements before it was programmed into the computer. So he was his term,
the worst title ever
was dinosaur supervisor on Jurassic Park, and that's led to people like, what the fuck, Phil? Real people died. Why weren't you supervising those dinosaurs?
You had one job, Phil.
Yeah, you had one job. So yeah, Phil Tippett is a stop motion specialist, and he goes into sort of the detail of getting Ed 209 to move. And for that scene where he falls down the stairs, they actually built a replica scale model of the staircase and then just threw a model down it.
Yeah, and I just love that bit where his foot's trying to feel for.
Well, again, apparently that's all Phil, according to the writers. That wasn't in the script. That was just him like playing around with animations. Like, it's a bit of comedy. Whereas he's feeling for the steps, and just when he's on his back.
Just like I don't know what you'd call it, just like a bee, a dead insect on its back scrambling around. But that's sort of Act 1 versus Robocop. I do like when they next meet, it's a much shorter encounter.
Yes.
He just wheels out the tank gun.
The massive gun. I do have a plot question. I don't know if it's just something I've missed before. So the whole Ed 209 Robocop, the initial face-off happens where he goes to arrest Dick Jones,
and incurs
the fourth directive.
Yeah.
Now, Dick Jones said, "Oh yeah, I had this installed early on to protect me." When did he do that? Because
this brings me back to my original point in that Dick Jones is Bob's boss. Bob is an up-and-coming star, and it's like
I think they work for different companies, both competing for contracts.
I think they both work for OCP in the same building.
Yeah,
I thought it's security.
Okay, I'm going to have to get Paul Verhoeven. I'm going to have to get
I think they're rival.
Because they're both from security departments. They're both building projects but they're just approaching it in different ways. So they are competing for the top spot. It's like the old man isn't going to be here forever, and so Dick Jones is going for his position, and Dick Jones is saying, "Well, look, I'm going to be your boss one day," and I think that's why. He works in the same department. I think the reason how he was able to get that directive in, I mean, he kind of says that, doesn't he? In the film, is like. He put it in.
He says he put it in, but I'm just wondering when, because obviously he was opposed to the Robocop
I think
program.
he put it in because he was opposed. He was like, I'm not going to have this guy,
this maverick renegade,
stop me. Yeah, no one's going to rain on my parade.
So yeah, we get to the main sort of the conclusion. So we get that part where Lewis and Murphy team up. He takes off the Judge Dredd moment. He takes off his helmet. It's not Sylvester Stallone. I think it's. I mean, you were saying it looks really funny, but I think the effects where he takes off his helmet, seeing that sort of join between sort of metal and real face, I think it's brilliant special effects.
Yeah, great makeup.
It reminds you of the brutality of his situation.
Yeah, definitely. And
that's all that's left of it.
And the other thing is, I don't know if it just reminded me of going back to Total Recall. Is it the same set where Arnie goes and has the conversation with himself? It looks like the same steel mill.
I was going to say
where he pulls the thing out of his nose.
Because there's also what did I say? Because I put something about that, about how Is he talking about what the future's going to be look like? There's a lot of disused factories because the drug bust.
Yeah.
There's the opening scene, and then there's the end scene. Is it all in the same, or is it just the dying nature of industry? Do you know what I mean? It was that an underlying thing.
So then, obviously, we've got Clarence and his guns. The massive guns. I'm sure it looks like there's like a CCTV camera is the site because the guns are so big, but they are just huge cannons, aren't they?
Yeah, I mean, as I say, the shape and design, they look like the sort of things that a sharpshooter would use maybe in the early 90s sort of thing, but with a few attachments added onto it. And the explosions are Verhoeven level explosions.
But getting to Verhoeven style, we get Emil's downfall.
Oh my God, we used to laugh, because I think we were, like you, terrified by this toxic waste incident the first time, but then to get over that, it became sort of like nervous laughter and then just outright hysterics. We were looking forward to this scene so much.
So I went and saw this a few years ago at the Prince Charles. There was a double bill of Terminator and then Robocop.
Wonderful.
And I went and saw it with a couple of workmates, and they said that afterwards they were a little bit worried about me because I was the only person laughing at the help me. I was uncontrollably laughing
so much when we were younger.
Yeah, and my mates just thought I was a bit weird.
You are a bit weird.
So I showed my true colours.
So the prosthetics in that scene are astonishing.
Yeah, amazing. And still today.
Yeah, I mean, still, like, things like the thumb flesh hanging off the bone.
Yeah.
And the flesh hanging off the bones and the jaw. And it really, really sells what could have been just a complete botched effect. Now, you were saying the guy from The Thing was involved. Well,
yes.
I imagine he had his fingerprints all over.
Yeah. And apparently the guy that he encounters, I can't remember the guy's name, but he's in loads of TV. I can't remember it's the guy he approaches and says, help me too.
So I'm not going to stop doing this.
Apparently that was the first time he had actually seen the effects, so that's why the looks of genuine fear on his face and shock are real, of like, get off me.
It's brilliant.
And then he literally just explodes over a car. It's just a really splattery, wet explosion. It's
very liquidy.
And, you can't see through the windscreen.
But it's all these things that Verhoeven does. It's all these threats. It's like I think it's in Total Recall. It's like ever since we lost the ozone layer, and it's like all of these adverts about this, fascist police force, about there being toxic waste, about there being nukes, about there being this loss of control. It is still quite. I don't know, there's a lot of messages in there, and I think it's like, well, how is he going to die? It's like, well, it's a factory. What would be the worst way to die possible? Well, being shot by a robot. Well, we've done that.
Being shot in the dick by a robot.
Having your kneecap shot off and then watching a grenade tick down. Yeah. Done that. What could be? It's like...
Yeah.
There's a few times where Verhoeven shows his darker side.
And I suppose that's... I suppose the... Clarence's death is pretty graphic because he gets the CD drive in the neck.
Yeah, brilliant.
That took me by surprise this time. I completely forgot about how he ends.
I kind of did as well. I remember that he uses it on someone. I just couldn't remember who. I thought he did. Oh, there it is.
I think again that was
it's
smart storytelling.
Yeah, it's a key part of the storytelling. He's using it as searching for people.
It's teased in a certain way.
Yeah,
and even when he brings it out, it's kind of threatening and a little bit comedic.
Oh, is that a weapon? No, it's not a weapon.
Yeah. And he uses it to search the computers for the information he's after, and then you kind of forget about it by the end of the film. But because it's been put in there as a non-offensive weapon sort of thing, you do forget, and then he brings it out last minute.
Double
it's like kind of the
shot, so
and
much blood,
very splattery, and the spurting.
Paul, we're running low on squibs.
It's a real shame because there's been some fantastic special effects throughout this film, but when it comes to Dick Jones's comeuppance and he's shot and falls out the window, oh my God, what is happening with that man's arms?
I don't know, but it's definitely a doll. Can we all agree it's a doll?
I think it's Phil Tippett and his animatronic arms, but his arms are about the length of his whole body. It's shocking. It's a shame.
I do like Bob Morton's colleague going, yes, when Dick Jones gets shot.
Johnson is the unsung hero in this.
Yeah.
He's the guy who's like, it's baby food.
Yeah, it's baby food. He's great. And he's so happy watching his potential boss get blown apart and blown out the window. But yeah, very satisfying comeuppance, and it ends where it all began. Around a boardroom table with blood and gore.
Now,
they'll fix you.
Are we going to spend? Because I started. So I watched this on Netflix, and they've got all of them on Netflix. I started watching the first 10 minutes of RoboCop 2, and it was very late, so I switched it off. Do either of you remember RoboCop 2? Does it hold up at all?
I just remember it's about a drug called Narc.
Kane. Oh no,
Kane's the bad drug dealer whose brain gets put in like an Ed 209.
Yeah, but what do they? Yeah, there is a drug.
And there's a drug lord who's like
I think the drug's
7 years old.
Yeah, I think it is. Yeah, no,
there's like an 8-year-old kid who's a drug dealer.
Could you fucker?
Yeah, that's the bit I got up to, and I was like, oh yeah, I remember that bit.
Yeah, it kind of screws with RoboCop's memories of his child. Which, interestingly, I wondered this time watching through with the Total Recall angle, did he ever have a family? Because you never see his family for real. You only see his memories.
In the memories.
And you wonder if maybe his brain got scrambled and he's grabbing for something that was never real.
But to be fair, I know we sort of made it a bit...
Well, no, because he's practicing, he does the gun thing for his son.
He does the gun thing, but he tells himself it's...
Maybe he just watches TJ Laser by himself.
Okay.
In his studio apartment.
Do you reckon that version of it has William Shatner in it? Because it's clearly TJ Hooker.
TJ Laser. But yeah, I know I sort of made a cheap joke about the remake. I think that there are some...
Well, no, you and I agreed that it's a different type. It's brave for taking a different type of film.
Yeah, to go on your point, Ben, I think the remake does make some interesting points about the nature of memory, because I think they're trying to raise his memory, but then they realise that he can't function as well. So there's that sort of control.
Yeah, they take away his human. They make him more machine-like, don't they? In that film, and then
they drug him and then make it. But the fact is that he knows who his family is, and then they say, yeah, we need him to be. He's too emotional.
Yeah,
let's take the emotion out of it. And there are some interesting themes in the remake. Obviously, it has, by having Michael Keaton in it obviously adds a couple of points as well, and Samuel L. Jackson. It's
also got one of the most wooden robotic actors of the current time.
Joel Kinnaman.
Yeah,
but yeah, no, it's just a very safe, bland, a bit like the Total Recall remake. It's a very bland, pointless remake.
I think there was a sort of twofold problem fundamentally with the remake. One is that all the violence was completely toned down.
12A.
So it took one of the sort of thematic aesthetics out of the series. And two, a good guy's only as good as a bad guy is bad, and the bad guy in that, I mean, can you even remember what he looked like? It was so completely forgettable.
That's not Michael Keaton, because he's the sort of the corporate version.
Yeah, no, but there's no Clarence Bodaker. There's no one like charismatic guy running around murdering cops and doing
there's not much,
throwing people out of vans. There's nothing. He's just like a placeholder. We need a bad guy. We'll get that guy.
It's always about the bad.
Well, no, but something that we've touched on, Charlie. We talked about the 80s and the 90s had so many good character actors in small roles. And you had people that, a bit like Kurtwood Smith, like, I was just,
It's gone full reversal now, because now you've got people who are, they're doing more stuff on Netflix, and then they have success on Netflix, and they go into film, but then they're almost doing films to stay on Netflix, whereas back then, TV was the launch pad for film.
Yeah. No, but it's funny, though, like, if you said Kurtwood Smith, like, oh, yeah, it's the guy from Robocop, but, I'm sure I've seen him in something else, and obviously, we said That 70s Show, he's in Rambo 3, Under Siege 2, Broken Arrow. So, he's cropped up in some big films. There's also a link between, I think, 3 of the main actors have have links to Star Trek. So, Ronnie Cox, Kurtwood Smith was in Star Trek 6 as one of the Klingons, maybe. Ronnie Cox is cropped up, and obviously Peter Weller he's the...
He was in the reboot, wasn't he?
He's in the reboot, but he was also in some of the Next Generation, I think, as well. So, yeah, bit of a start. But they are all... I mean, again, Peter Weller, outside of Robocop, I would struggle to sort of, name him in a few things. Obviously, we've talked about, we're big fans of that Dark Knight Returns animated thing. And his voice is probably an odd choice, but I think it works. They've all consistently got work in sort of character actor type stuff.
But me, like you, I do wish or wonder, maybe it's just not my cup of tea, why I haven't enjoyed more Peter Weller in more.
Well, he's been busy at university
doing his
I went to see him at London Film and Comic Con last year in the summertime. And
stay out of trouble.
Indeed, and he was absolutely fantastic. I mean, he must be in his 70s.
Yeah, must be
by now. But he was so vital. He had so much energy on stage. He didn't sit down for a second. He was pacing up and down.
It's all that time trapped in the robot suit. He's clawing it all back.
If you ever get a chance to see him speak, go. He's just an inspiration to be around. But it turns out one of the things I learned about him is he has a PhD in Renaissance art, and not an honorary degree from a university for some donation. Like he literally just went out and earned, did his studies and passed his Viva and got his arts PhD in Renaissance art. And he's obviously got a lot of strings to his bow.
Speaking of which, do you know Ronnie Cox, the man who plays Dick Jones, is a talented country singer-songwriter and has 5 albums? 5
global.
So apparently he's been doing a lot of TV. He was in Dexter. He was in, I think, the 3rd series of True Detective, but he's also been in Nashville. I think that's where he's been doing a lot of his singing. But yes, he's an accomplished singer-songwriter. Well, I think that leads us to...
Was it time to release?
It is time to release
Jeff and Celine.
It is.
Your scientists were so preoccupied with whether or not they could, they didn't stop to think if they should.
Coulda Woulda Shoulda is where George and Ben and myself, if we have done any homework, but normally George informs us of the other actors or directors who were looking at this project, were considered for roles but didn't get selected.
Yeah, so there's 2 main people that were in the running for this, and neither one, when I tell them to you, are that surprised, and consider they have both worked with Paul Verhoeven before or since. So the first one was Rutger Hauer. So Rutger Hauer had worked with Verhoeven on one of his, I think it's one of the few Dutch films of his early films I've seen, I think Soldier of Orange, which is about a set in World War II. But the other one, and you mentioned him earlier, was Michael Ironside.
It isn't a proper Verhoeven film without him at least being considered.
And apparently they were both ruled out because they were both too tall, too big, that they said that by adding all the sort of robo costume, it would have just looked ridiculous. So they needed somebody that was quite slender and quite slim and relatively small. So I think Peter Weller is maybe 5'10", 5'11". Mm-hmm. But yeah, both Michael Ironside and Rutger Hauer are over 6 foot, so they would just be too tall for the role.
Can you imagine them it would be hard to get all those shots. Everyone's towering over.
Yeah.
Well, it's
towering over everybody else.
It's funny you say that, because when you mentioned before that Ironside was considered, I was like, well, it's clearly for Clarence Boddicker, because that's the Ironside. Well, it's also the role that he kind of plays in, because he's underling to Ronnie Cox in Total Recall.
Yeah. So yeah, that was it's a short Coulda Woulda Shoulda, but I mean, as I say, it's just goes to show. Obviously, they've both worked with Verhoeven in the past or future.
Which neatly brings us to suspicious spin-offs. So who's ready to go first? Suspicious spin-offs is where we like to have a little bit of fun and say what sort of show,
what do we want to see more of?
Yeah, what do we want to see more of? What is missing from
who do we want to see more of?
The Robo Jesus universe? So Ben, as our guest, I think you can start us off. Have you got a long one or a short one?
I've got a short one and a long one. How are we doing?
Right. Well, mine's pretty much straight off the bat, and I don't think it's what you're going to go with. Mine involves 2 characters from the film, both robots. It's a buddy cop film starring Ed 209 and Robocop. Ed 209 is the moron. He gets all of the laughs, and it's about him and Robocop, kind of like 48 Hours. Think of like that. Okay. Sort of like a red heat sort of thing. Hilarity ensues. I'm thinking maybe 2 or 3 dodgy sequels, all obviously straight to video. But that's all I've really got, because I think I was a bit spent after watching Robocop 2. And let's not talk about Robocop 3 where he flies.
And fights ninjas.
Oh my God. Okay, so have Have you got a short one? Because I think...
Yeah, my short one is really short, so we talked about him at the end, but, comedy black guy Johnson, the guy that cheers. I just want to see a sitcom based around him and corporate shenanigans. Him just being a bit of a clown, getting in people's way, a bit like, sort of like The Office, mockumentary, just following Johnson around.
Could his catchphrase be... Yes, with a clenched fist.
Yeah, and that's and it ends on a freeze frame every episode.
Him just going, yes, that's what happens. That's what we do in security control systems.
Yeah. So yeah, that's it. It's just a really bad cheesy sitcom. I mean, you could easily see it playing on the TVs in Detroit.
Could it always be that it could just be called like Schadenfreude, and whenever one of his office mates falls over, he's like yes,
yes,
or like someone spills hot coffee down their front, he just pops into the screen. Yes.
Well, I think good things and bad things both work.
Yeah, anything could be a sweet old lady tripping up on the street and he just pops out the door. Yes. So yeah, that's mine. Sort of.
What do you got for us, Ben?
Well, two. I've got one real suspicious spin-off, and if you've never heard of this or you've never seen it, I cannot recommend it enough. It's called Our Robocop Remake. All one word. Get on YouTube or go to the website. It's crowdfunded, and a bunch of Robocop fans from around the world all submitted their scene. And so it's dozens and dozens
crowdfunded film.
Different filmmakers remaking their favourite scene from Robocop. It's scene for scene remake, but it varies from incredibly high-end, really good stop motion animation and CGI to sock puppets to cardboard cutouts. The penis shooting scene, there's 100 penises get shot. It's absolutely hilarious.
So
it's loving.
Is it like full length of the film?
It's the entire length of the film.
Oh wow!
Remade scene for scene by Robocop fans with love and affection.
This is what people did before YouTube.
Yeah, and it's absolutely phenomenal. I do recommend that you check that out.
We'll put a link on.
So that's Our Robocop
remake,
and that's hour as in time or as hours?
As in hours.
Right. Okay.
Us fans.
Share a link. We'll put it in the show notes.
Cool.
Okay. So I was thinking about a Netflix series, and there's a lot of things that are all the rage now, but crossovers are big time. So I'm thinking Robocop versus Terminator versus Aliens versus Predator versus Judge Dredd versus Batman versus Daredevil versus Deadpool versus Rick and Morty.
Wow.
I see you could use Rick and Morty to combine this. They could have an accident with a portal gun, and they're getting pursued by Predator and aliens, and rather than just going merely through the dimensional and time portals, they rip through the impervious barrier between legal film franchises, and they're bouncing around. Rick's grabbing all the bits off the dead robots and superheroes, and he has to fight Predator, and it all gets very bloody and messy, but Robocop saves the day.
So it's essentially like Pickle Rick, but made out of 80s movie franchises.
And a Rickle in time, from the sounds of it. Yeah, it's ripping through all the franchises.
I think this is going to be very expensive, but I would watch.
Yeah, as I said,
very expensive leave it for the legal team.
Yeah, get that guy out of House of Cards, and I'm on board. Which one? I don't know. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, he's going cheap now, right?
Yeah. If not, got Disney Plus coming online soon. They'll be all over this. Thank you very much, Ben. Anything else you want to say, George? How do you feel about going back and taking a retro ramble on Robocop?
I hope we have done it justice. I mean, it is a classic film of the 80s. It's a classic film of the sci-fi genre. I think people do write it off for its uber violence. Obviously it gave us introduced the larger world to the crazy Dutch genius that is Paul Verhoeven. It was basically a case of diminishing returns in terms of the sequels and remakes and animated TV shows and video games. Yeah, I think it's an important film, and due to the satire, I think it still holds up and is a lot of fun.
And Ben, what was it like going back and watching this?
Yeah, gratifying, and I got a lot out of it. I hadn't seen it for a long time, and it was worth revisiting for sure.
Yeah, been a long time for me, and yeah, as I said, what stuck out to me was just the whole, how it just seemed like so much of a great solid origin story with multi-layered philosophy and obviously the typical Verhoeven satire. So before we go on, Ben can be found doing his top film tip. Haven't you got something else you want to mention? A book? to promote?
Yes, thanks, Charlie. Yeah, I have written a book this year. It's called Winner Winner. You can find information about it at winnerwinnernovel.com. Available on Amazon. You might have to search for my full name to find it. So if you search for Benjamin Leon Dadds, that's D-A-D-D-S, it should pop up under there as Winner Winner.
We'll include all the information in the show notes. Put a link on the blog episode, on the blog page as well for that.
So what are you going to tell us? What's a quick synopsis about the book?
Maybe a top film tip style.
So the story is called Winner Winner. All Winston wants is to win, but is being a winner all he wants to be? Whilst trying to fit in at his new secondary school, Winston winters, a competitive but well-meaning youth, chooses to enter a challenging series of sporting events. After accidentally coming into contact with an experimental new treatment designed to mend broken brains, Win's new perceptive prowess gives him everything he wanted, but at what cost? On his journey of discovery, Wins will learn that life is not a zero-sum game.
So there you have it, Winner Winner.
So yeah, as I say, we'll put a link in the show notes and on the blog. I have read the book, and I do recommend it for people of science fiction. And it's a young adult sort of sci-fi.
Yeah, I think it's written towards a younger audience, but people of all ages seem to be enjoying it.
I certainly enjoyed it, and I'm not saying that just because you're in front of me right now. No, it is a lot of fun. There's some sly movie references in there, amongst other things. So yeah, if you're a fan of the sci-fi genre, check it out. Winner Winner.
So George, what have we got anything else we need to plug of our own? We've got some cool stuff coming up over the summer. Blockbuster Central. We've got some anniversaries coming, so there's going to be a whole host of films coming up, so stay tuned at retroramble.blog. We're on all the social medias, Stitcher, wherever you get your podcast, Spotify, YouTube.
Yes, and as always, the obligatory, if you enjoy these podcasts, please leave us a review on iTunes, because it does matter. It makes us more visible to the masses. And if you enjoy it, why not recommend it to a friend?
Brilliant.
A work colleague.
Pen pal. An evil boss like Dick Jones. Okay, brilliant. Well, thank you very much, Ben. I've been Charlie McGee.
I've been George McGee.
And you've been...
I've been Ben.
And where can we find you on Twitter, Ben?
You find me at TopFilmTip on Twitter. And thanks very much for having me on, guys. I really appreciate the invite up here in Retro Ramble Towers.
Well, pleasure to have you. And yeah, I do recommend you follow Top Film Tip on Twitter, because they are a lot of fun, and it's just handy to see what good films are on Freeview Telly, because not all of us can be bothered to pay for Sky.
Who can? Okay, so that's Retro Ramble, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
She's from me.
Well, hey, can I have you both?
Sure. We've had our shots.
I'd buy that for $1.